Hello, Wastelanders! I must say that it was really great to see how quickly the comments were coming in for the questions video. I'm glad to have all the fantastic fans that listen to and support Confessions of a Wasteland Pony. You asked some really good questions too, so hopefully this gives you a look behind the scenes on the making of this original audio drama series. First question, will any characters from other Fallout Equestria stories appear in Confessions? This is a question that really harkens back to one of the original reasons for creating Confessions of Wasteland Pony in the first place. You see, in early 2014, after the release of Nuclear Winter Wonderland, Stable-Tec went through a major surge of people joining the ranks, from writers to musicians to artists to voice actors. One of the problems associated with those voice actors, though, was that the main four characters of the series were already cast at the time, as they had to be chosen to make the original promo way back when. Because of that, a lot of the voice actors were sort of sitting on their hands waiting for parts that they could play. I could understand that feeling myself. I originally joined Stable-Tec because I wanted to play Steel Hooves, but alas, that option wasn't open for me. But because I had worked my way up to voicing DJ Pony, I thought I could use his character to set up a new format that would benefit the other VAs as well. At the time, I was listening through the World War Z dramatized audiobook again, and had the idea basically fall into place. Just like how Max Brooks told the story of the zombie war through the eyes of a bunch of different characters, I could do something similar with the stories of a bunch of Wasteland ponies. Not only would that give me some stuff to do as DJ Pony, but it would also create a way for the other VAs to have their own star character. There are a dozen different Little Pip voices out there, but there's only one Battered Blade. There might be 100 Steel Hooves or guys doing a voice for Steel Hooves, but there's only one Dr. Greenshift. In this way, each of them could have a character to truly call their own. It would give me the challenge of writing a good character for them to breathe life into. And that is still the heart of Confessions of a Wasteland Pony. So while DJ Pony and Homage are there by necessity for the format, all the other characters in the series are going to be original ones of my own. Plus, to be honest, characters like Blackjack and Little Pip and Murky Number 7 or Pink... I almost said Pink Eyes, there are so many side stories, I couldn't even include them all. They all have their own stories, and the world is big enough for them all to share, so I figure I'd rather write more original characters. Plus, the fact that I don't want to stray too closely into canon territory because I don't want to make, little mistakes all over the place because that's interfering with the main story or the other side storylines. Doing it this way, having my settings and everything unique to my own stories, means I don't have too many troubles dealing with continuity with our writing director. Second question, would you possibly make a Confessions episode off of a fan-submitted story? This is another request I got a few of, so it's going to go up front in this video also. Unfortunately, no. In the very beginning, I thought the format might work for a Monster of the Week kind of serialization, like the X-Files series or the Fringe series, but I never wanted it to be just that. The first episode with Battered Blade was in so many ways a product test. Just like the original Star Wars, it was meant to be a fully self-contained story in case it wasn't popular enough to warrant any more being made. However, when it was so well received and got a lot of positive feedback from fans, I knew it was something worth making more of. Because honestly, that's what really drives this forward. I always expected bad or critical comments, but if you really truly like something, please leave a positive comment for it. And that's just not from me or any of the creators on this channel. It's the Brony fandom or YouTube at large. They really love and appreciate those positive comments. It lets us know that something really has a good audience and is really worth continuing to make. So because of that positive feedback, I went back to work on working out an overarching story. While I was writing episode 2, The Ghoul Doctor, I was already laying out the outline for what was originally going to be a 12 or 13 episode series. As I was wrapping up the script for The Duchess Horror, all the timeline was set and the plan for the overarching story was in place. So while the first few episodes do work well enough on their own, they are absolutely part of a bigger story, and are full of little details that will ultimately connect them all together. I'm writing it in such a way so hopefully by the end, when it's all said and done, you can go back and listen through everything from the beginning and have it mean that much more when you see where everything is headed. Because of that overarching narrative, and because this is ultimately an experiment in and of itself for myself as a writer, there won't be any episodes written by fans or even by other studio members. Also, it would be difficult to produce fan-submitted stories for some significant reasons. Third question, how long does it take to create an episode? Production of one episode, even the original, takes several months. At the very beginning, in the spring of 2014, actually, it was right around the equinox, the winter wrap-up. I was actually moving across the country from California to Virginia. Because I would be spending roughly 8 hours in the air or in an airport terminal, I thought I would spend the time writing after having this idea to do my own World War Z dramatic audiobook type series. I spent 6 hours in the air writing a 6-page script, which ultimately became The X-Raider. So almost all of the first episode of Confessions was written at 30,000 feet. It was really peaceful. I actually wrote most of the first 3 episodes while I was flying or waiting in an airport terminal. I had nothing but time on my hands, which was a nice change of pace from my otherwise busy life. So I would sit there listening to the hum of the jet engines or some kind of soundtrack or music in the background and type away on a Google Doc on my little crappy Samsung Chromebook. Once the script was done, casting took about 3 weeks until I Am Shadow 007 was chosen. She was a good friend I had known from past projects, and she was also cast as our Sweetie Belle because, aside from characterization, she has a really beautiful singing voice, which you can hear in songs like Get Happy, Jingle Bell Rock, and Let It Snowdrop on my channel. After that, she spent a month recording, then I spent a few weeks editing it all down while recording my own lines, until finally releasing it on June 15th of 2014. During that process, one of the Stable-Tec vector artists was nice enough to do the DJ Pony record sleeve art and the art of the studio and characters. Luckily, he was able to translate my pencil sketches well enough. Same with him and the other artists. They did the final pieces, but I did all the concepts myself. Then, once their final art was done, I would do some more vectoring or Photoshop manipulation on the back end to make it all fit within the story and the narrative in the video. By the time episode 3 was being made, there was now a certain minimum amount of artwork I wanted to keep consistent between each episode. If you watch the beginnings of all 4 episodes, you'll notice a lot of the same sort of pacing and production with the artwork and how the stories unfold. So because the art is so important to that setup and storytelling, there are a lot of subtle things in there that do matter. A lot of thought went into each piece, every single one of my pencil sketches. But of course, all of that is a process that takes time, and that's actually another one of the reasons the story started getting longer. If I did a bunch of little 20-minute stories, the art timing to produce for each of them would be just too much. And I was getting better as a writer, so writing more pages at a faster pace was becoming easier for me. Plus, I started out with 2 or 3 artists, then went down to just one main artist, Lee, who was with me at the beginning, and now recently I lost him. So actually, I'm pretty much doing all the Confessions art on my own now. So you guys will have to give me a little bit of grace as I get better at working with the vectors and Photoshop and manipulating past assets. And besides just waiting for art, I really had bigger ideas for all of these stories. I mentioned before about how these stories aren't necessarily heavily edited in the sense that I tell the stories as they come to me and as they sort of unravel in my own brain. I'm not trying to manipulate them to fit them all into a specific time code or fit some, TV scheduled length. The stories just happen as I want to tell them. So overall, on average, I'd say the production for each episode is about 6 months. It takes me about 3 months to write it, and then 2 to 3 weeks of casting, and then about 5-ish weeks of recording. I try not to push the VAs too much because, this is all volunteer, and I want to make sure that what they record is good. And then I edit everything down into a first cut and send back the retakes to the VAs and run those through again, and then send back any final retakes and wrap up the editing and production. So ultimately, from the beginning of the script to the final release is about 6 months on average. Which meant that even during this big gap between the Duchess Horror and the Engineer, I kept writing, because I'm hoping to just overlap these once more and more of the stories are done. So now I'm just waiting on different VAs to record simultaneously, which right now is happening with episode 5 and 6. They're fully written and finalized and being recorded, so I am really hoping my ultimate goal would be to have both of them out before the new year. But I can't make a promise. And then right now, over half of the episode 7 script is done, so we're on our way. It's getting closer to the end. Fourth question, how long is the series going to be? The whole of Confessions is going to be 9 or 10 episodes. I haven't decided yet. All the episodes from here on out will be about the length of episode 4. They're basically all going to be novellas. But ultimately, I hope that's enriching for the audience because it's more story to listen to, and obviously with things like Fallout Equestria and Heroes and Project Horizons and etc., I think the fandom at large is happy with or even demanding of longer, better stories. And the way they've come out, I think they justify their length. At the end of it all, I believe the whole of Confessions will be about 24 hours long of story and 300,000 words. So roughly a third to 2/5 the length of the original Fallout Equestria. And considering I'm already basically 2/3 done with the writing of the story, that's gonna come pretty fast. I absolutely want to have the last episode out before the end of the year 2017, but ultimately I'm hoping to have it out by around late summer to early fall of 2017. So we'll see what happens. Keep your fingers crossed, and hopefully I don't run into any more slowdowns with VAs or... Well, that's pretty much the only thing now, because I'm doing all the art. So even though the episodes are a bit of a longer length, you can download them for free from the Mediafire links in the description of the videos, or if you want to contribute or show appreciation for them, you can purchase the episodes through the Bandcamp. Within those Mediafire and Bandcamp links, the episodes are broken up into dramatic sections, almost like chapters in a book. And in fact, each of those sections do have titles to them, but I leave the titles out because they'd be a little bit too spoilery if you were just scrolling down it all as a playlist. But eventually, at the end, I'm hoping to maybe release the scripts and the art and everything in one massive package, and you'll be able to see those titles that I originally had for them, which ultimately just benefit the VAs at the moment. Fifth question, where can I find the art from the series? That is a great question. On the Stable-Tec Facebook page, we have a big folder filled with wallpapers that contain art from all of the Confessions series, as well as many other Stable-Tec song arts and other productions. And on top of the wallpapers, we do highlight other specific art pieces, like the epilogue pictures that may show significant things from the episode 4. Like in the case of The Engineer, the opening epilogue picture shows a picture of Homage and Rose Petal as they're having a girls' night out trying on dresses, but specifically you get a look at Rose Petal's nice royal posterior, as well as the scar on her leg, which happens in the middle of her own story. Then on the Stable-Tec Facebook page, there's also a Confessions Quotes folder, which are a series of shareable sort of quote images from the story that hopefully you can pass around and let others know who might not be familiar with the story. Especially with Project Horizons over, we're hoping that Fallout Equestria fans might find interest in Confessions and Terminal Secrets and some of our other Stable-Tec original stories. So definitely give us a like, it's worth checking out. 6th question, how tall are you? I'm guessing this is a reference to my old 2,000 subscriber Q&A from my Skybolt channel. Wow, it's crazy now to think that these videos were actually made before Confessions was even a thing. Man, that was a long time ago. But anyway, that actually offers a bit of fun insight into my original pony productions back in the day, so definitely check out those Q&A videos if you're interested. 7th question, what is up with the snow globe, and why are the cassettes changing locations? Nothing in Confessions of a Wasteland Pony is by accident. The music, for instance, all the songs that open the episode and are also part of the intermissions, have a certain purpose for that episode and ultimately the series as a whole. So definitely pay attention to each one of those ponifications as they come out on my Skybolt channel, because they will give you hints about what episodes are to come. And the art is the same way. Every piece of art in the video is meant to enhance the story in some way. That's why I definitely encourage everyone to watch the first and last 10 minutes of each episode, because that's when all the art is going to play a really key role. I might drop in a little hint thing in the middle, but for the most part, if you watch the first and last 10 minutes of the episodes, you're going to get all of the meaning from the artwork. You'll notice at the very beginning of the first episode, when we're panning over one of DJ Pony's desks, we land on the record sleeve, which was clearly from before the war. But over the top of the sleeve, in bright red ink, is written the title, Confessions of a Wasteland Pony. First of all, the ink is not red just to stand out. It is meant to represent that the story will largely be written in blood. Fresh blood rising out of the confines of the old world, represented by the record sleeve. The life everlasting snow globe applies to really a lot of things in the series. The snow globe happened to be pinkish, representative of the princesses before the war, who themselves were thought to be eternal, and the kingdom itself in the same way. But after the war, the snow globe is like a sad premonition of things to come. Every episode connects to it in one way or another because it ties so closely with so many themes of the Fallout Equestria universe. It is the immortal ghouls. It is the ghosts from the past that are kept moving by dark magic. It's the echoes of civilization still felt across the land. It's the princesses living on in everyone's collective memory, even if only through expletives. It's the cold machines that keep ticking away, moving under the power of clockwork set by those who are long dead. So, life everlasting, the snow globe, means a lot of things. The reason the holotapes keep changing from episode to episode are because of the overarching story, which is a linear narrative. Everything begins 2 years before Little Pip leaves the stable, but each episode is roughly 2 to 4 weeks apart from each other. So there is a clear passage of time, and that passage of time is going to matter as the clock keeps ticking. But just like how the rerun of episode 3 was ready to play in case Amber wanted to back out, even those holotapes ultimately mean something. 8th question, what happened at the end of the first episode? I realize the ending of the first episode might have been a bit hard to interpret for some, mainly because I was experimenting with that big final reveal at the end. Besides using visuals and artwork to give subtle story details, I also use them for deception. So everyone who watched the first episode for the first time only saw DJ Pony and Battered Blade talking to each other. Then, in those final moments, DJ turns on a third microphone, and you can hear the voice of Emerald Fields off-screen. She's crying alongside her mother after hearing her tell the story of how Battered ended up raising her. So now as an adult, Emerald's few seconds of airtime were meant to convey that she had grown up and after understanding Battered's story had long forgiven her for what happened. It was the emotional resolution for the audience, knowing that after her confession, Battered had indeed been forgiven by the only pony who could forgive her. That's another major theme in Confessions, being right there in the title itself. Everyone has done wrong in their lives. Everyone has done bad things either through malice or mistake. So Confessions is a way of conveying those stories and how those characters ultimately found redemption for what they'd done. 9th question. Will previous characters return in future episodes? Well, for those of you who are caught up, obviously DJ Pony and Homage are recurring characters, but beyond that I can neither confirm nor deny, so you'll just have to keep listening and find out. 10th question. Who is DJ Pony? Well, that's one of life's great mysteries, isn't it? One of the other plot structures of Confessions of a Wasteland Pony is that it's portrayed as if it's being listened to by those of the equestrian wasteland. This is acknowledged most directly by Dr. Greenshift, who points out that he's been hearing DJ Pony's voice on the radio for a long time. Greenshift seems to think he might be a ghoul, as do many in the wasteland, but the thing is, none of them know for sure. Although most people who listen to Confessions have also listened to the original Fallout Equestria, I try to restate and reestablish important things like DJ Pony's ambiguity, to make sure that it's as accessible as possible to new listeners. But for the most of you that are familiar with Fallout Equestria, you know who DJ Pony turns out to be. But Confessions occurs 2 years before all of that happens, so you don't know who you could be listening to. Even with his guess, DJ Pony is situated behind that one-way mirror, peering into the old Ministry of Arcane Science interrogation room. So not only are the ponies being interrogated in every sense, but they are also being kept ambiguously in the dark about DJ Pony's identity, as are the listeners. 11th question. Will there be any interviews with Zebras, Enclave, etc.? So, both Zebras and Enclave have the same inherent problem. They're both the enemy and must be destroyed. No, I'm kidding. Well, kind of. The problem with both, though, is that they are such essential story elements to the original Fallout Equestria and so many other side stories, I'm not sure what else I could tell about them. So while they get mentioned in one way or another, they won't probably ever be a feature of the stories, so to speak. Think of them like the Brotherhood of Steel in New Vegas. They are present in New Vegas, and you understand their concrete effect on the universe and the story, but they aren't a specific major player in that tale. In the same way, Zebra Magic was only a factor in the Duchess Horror. It was part of the universe, but the core of the story was something else. The other thing to remember, too, is that all of this occurs before Fallout Equestria. It is technically a prequel. So while the Enclave are there, they're only known to a few, and are mostly a nebulous force to the wasteland as a whole. Very little is understood about them on a grand level, or how they work. And because of the format of Confessions wouldn't mesh well with DJ Pony broadcasting to the entire wasteland knowledge about Zebra Society or Enclave Society, because of the few Dashites and Pegasi that are out there, it wouldn't necessarily make sense in the narrative, because I'm trying to stay as canonical as I can with the original Fallout Equestria. So in the case of the Stables, a general understanding of the Stables being messed up on a grand level is widely known throughout Equestria, because almost all surviving stable dwellers would either come from a control stable or a stable that had some necessarily weird factor about them. The only thing that the ponies at large don't really understand is the conspiracy as a whole. So while Pegasi or Zebras might appear in upcoming episodes, they won't be heavily featured or focused on. But I think that the characters that are planned out are just as interesting, because it's not just about what they are, but who they are that makes the story. For instance, Rose Betel and Battered Blade are both unicorn mares in their late 30s, but both of their stories and lives are completely different. 12th question. Would it be alright if I make some fan art of the characters? Absolutely, I would love to see fan art of any of the characters. If you do have any fan art at all, please send them over to us. You can either email them to skyboltmusic@gmail.com or message it to the Stable-Tec Facebook page or some other way to let us know. Just if you do draw any fan art, we would absolutely love to see it and possibly share it and link back to your DeviantArt or whatever other accounts you have. In fact, if the fan art is somewhere around the show style and it is diegetic enough that it could fit within the context of the Confessions universe, I'd definitely put it in the opening pan of one of the episodes. It could be another picture frame on the wall or something like that. Either way, it would be wonderful to see. To think that my artistic expression could inspire art in others is really what Fallout Equestria and Bronydom in general is all about. 13th question. Will there be more music inspired by or written for the series, like The Horror of Maricello? Well, the Verismo album that we recently released is basically inspired by and written for the series at the same time. Myself and the composer, James Kelly, explain how all that happened in the 3rd episode of the Stable Talk podcast, but basically, after the Duchess Horror, I wanted to have some Amoria music from before the war because of the part she played in that story. Having that music for DJ Pony to play would be almost like that Agatha violin station from Fallout 3. Luckily, the delay gave me time to eventually find James, who was skilled enough at doing this kind of music, and after talking to him about the album idea, we made it work out. I definitely hope to have more stuff like that in the future, because we're trying to stay as canonical as possible, so basically all of the Stable-Tec and my own Fallout Equestria music ultimately fits in with Confessions. For instance, all of the big band Fallout parodies on my Skybolt channel, Ain't Love a Buck to the Head, Dear Hearts and Gentle Ponies, Jeepers Creepers, Blue Moon, Beyond the Sea, were all written specifically with their Confessions episodes in mind, so they definitely serve a purpose. And then there are things like the Gilded Age album and Striped Mare, which fit into that too. In fact, the Gilded Age album has a DJ Pony opening, which explains how a lot of these songs interconnect with our Stable-Tec FOE universe. And speaking of interconnections, that means it's also tied into things like Terminal Secrets and any of our other original stories that may come in the future. Specifically, the theme song for Confessions of a Wasteland Pony, Every Story Must Come to an End, has that opening segment where the song is introduced. It's another way to bridge the gap between Confessions and the main Fallout Equestria story. But more importantly, the song itself exemplifies some themes that factor into the series as a whole. So for those of you who followed me for a while or are familiar with Moonrise and Fall of an Empire, you know that lyrics are kind of my thing. So no lyric is accidental. Take a listen to those songs and how they fit into the episodes, because they're all part of the plan. Trust me, I'm a man of my word. And speaking of Maricello, 14th question. Will we ever find out more about Maricello? Whose story did you find most interesting? I don't know if we'll visit it again. I am very fond of that episode. I always loved the Lovecraftian storylines from the Fallout series, like the Dunwich Building and Lorenzo's Artifact. Actually, one of the first audiobooks I listened to was a collection of H.P. Lovecraft stories, so in a lot of ways, that was bound to come out in one way or another. I like these things in the context of Fallout because, in a way, there's something really different, something magical and mysterious in a wasteland of exaggerated but mostly grounded science fiction. I was just all around proud of how the episode came out. It is probably my favorite in a certain sense. I really am trying to cover different topics and relationships with every one of the episodes, so obviously I think they're all great in their own ways, and I hope all of you do too. I try to make them different enough that everyone will get something unique out of them, but especially mixing in Point Lookout and Phantom of the Opera elements with the Lovecraftian undertone of the Duchess Horror. It was basically a combination of a bunch of things I specifically loved. But as far as seeing Maricello again, probably not, just because that was one of the neat things about the Duchess's story. She went there to recover what ultimately became the 13th tome of Okrut the Silent, and to bring change for her own family. But in the story, she ended up discovering what remained of her Oratorio family members and being able to bring about redemption for the souls of those relatives who were basically trapped within the purgatory of Maricello Manor. They lived for nearly 200 years as restless spirits, fueled by dark magic and driven by the indomitable will of their patriarch Crescendo. So when the stable-dweller couple discovered the mansion, they faced the wrath of the horror. And it was thanks to Rose Petal 5 years later that she was able to ultimately quiet that wrath. She came extending goodwill and apology for the things her family had done, and her heartfelt confession is what ultimately gave Harpsichord enough strength to overpower Crescendo and basically let the spirits finally rest in peace. I think that's a good ending for the Oratorio family and that story. Their souls can rest in solitude, tucked away in a forest forgotten by time. To revisit it again, I think would only minimize what Rose Petal had done for them, so probably, but I won't say anything definitively. Because 15th question, will you flesh out any of your characters in any other ways, maybe as fillers between the major releases? First off, it does warm my heart that you think of Confessions episodes as major releases. I really do put a ton of work and love into each of these. As for fleshing out the characters more, there is something like that in the works, but I can't really elaborate. You'll understand more after the release of Confessions episode 5. And for after Confessions is over, who knows? Maybe I'll follow one or more of them in another new adventure or something. I mean, they're always going to be there, unless I kill them off, of course. 16th question. I'm going to interpret this as Pinky's Sparkle Cola Park thing as a question about whether I'll be doing a kind of ponification of the Nuka World DLC. If you haven't noticed, I pull a lot of inspiration from Fallout DLCs for story content. I honestly think a lot of the DLCs have better storylines than the main games. For instance, the Duchess Horror is ultimately inspired by Point Lookout, everything from the swamps to the mansion to the black magic. In The Engineer, the slave master dynamics drew a lot of inspiration from The Pit. On the other hand, one benefit my story has compared to the original Fallout Equestria or Project Horizons is that it was largely written and conceived after the release of Fallout 4. So I will definitely draw on many Fallout 4 elements to bring something new into the universe. I'll also include new pony season things that didn't exist when Fallout Equestria was written during seasons 1 and 2. So definitely keep all of that in mind while listening, because you'll definitely hear some things pop up in the upcoming episodes. 17th question. What are your inspirations? Well, obviously, the whole story is based on and is an extension of Fallout Equestria by KCAT, and just like KCAT, I'm trying to mine every corner of Fallout universe lore. I've spent years building a Zax computer's worth of knowledge of Fallout in my brain, and I've tried to expand on ideas and things that haven't been done as much in the major side stories, especially since I really haven't read too many of the other side stories. So while everyone knows about Vault-Tec, for instance, from the Fallout universe, not too many are familiar with West-Tec that built the power armor and a few other things. So that kind of inspiration of another major company that isn't as well known is what I drew upon for East Corp, the Equestrian Arcane Systems and Technologies Corporation. And so I'm going to use the frame of East Corp to really expand on its own lore and how it fits into my corner of the Fallout Equestria universe. And aside from that, I draw a little ideas and inspirations from all sorts of sci-fi and other stories in general. There's a lot of animes and things I like that really inspire me, a lot of 80s sci-fi and action movies. Obviously, the format of the series is based on World War Z. And then one of my favorite authors, actually, who I listen to so many of his audiobooks, is Michael Crichton. From things like Andromeda Strain and Westworld and Prey and Jurassic Park and Sphere and State of Fear, Besides having well-constructed sci-fi lore, Michael Crichton has some very strong themes in his story about control and the hubris of man. He's constantly exploring the ways in which mankind tries to exert its dominance and control over nature or something else in the world, and about how quickly things can go wrong because of human error and pride. Ultimately, it is that hubris that brings about their downfall. It's a very strong theme because it's ultimately really relatable to one's own agency and behavior. Also, as a Christian, I've gone through a lot of theological classes over the years, so a lot of those ideas about penitence and confession and redemption definitely come natural for me. So the story of the Ghoul Doctor, for instance, is heavily inspired by the biblical story of Job. Both characters are essentially good people who are lambasted by horrible circumstances all around them, and at the central conflict of the story is whether or not that character's moral fortitude can survive the evil forces and bad circumstances, or if they'll ultimately get consumed by them. You can see a lot of these same themes in Boy Scout type superheroes. For instance, there's Superman, who was written by two Jewish authors, and then there was Captain America, who was based heavily on the American moral ideals of the 1950s, which factor in really well to the Fallout universe. And honestly, it's one reason Captain America is one of my favorite Marvel superheroes. Really, it's an essential element in all of storytelling. Morality and the agency of its characters are what bring those characters through their stories. It's how they live and react to those other characters and situations. So I'm definitely doing my best to draw from my own life experience and stories I love and characters I love to make my own characters as real and relatable as possible. And hopefully it keeps getting better over time as I continue to practice and develop my craft. Plus, it's really hard to ultimately separate yourself from your own collective works. Which is why, question 18, what kind of mic do you use and what do you like to do besides YouTube videos? I originally used a Blue Snowball microphone for about 2 to 3 years, so that's what you hear me speak through in Confessions 1 through 3, but that broke over this last Christmas, so I had to replace it with a Blue Yeti microphone. I think they're both great USB microphones for plug and play into a computer, but be sure, if you ever buy a Blue microphone, you buy it from someplace where you can return it to the store and not have to ship it back to the manufacturer. When I first bought my Blue microphone, the one I got came in the mail broken, and because I bought it from Best Buy Marketplace, which is somehow different than buying it from their website, they wouldn't take it back. So I had to mail it to Blue Microphones, and they have one of the worst customer supports ever. I just wanted to drive off a bridge. It was such a long week on the phone with people. The only worst customer experience I've had was with Western Digital hard drives. I had 2 of those damn hard drives, and they both broke on me, and I lost most of the data, and the customer support was horrible, and I cannot say enough bad things about them. So buy Seagate hard drives instead. Skybolt tested and approved. But back to Blue Microphones, their customer support is so terrible you can actually see the effect it had on my YouTube channel. I published my first video in August of 2012 with the crappy Walmart headset, and after that I decided I wanted to buy a proper microphone. But because of that whole customer support brouhaha and waiting 6 to 8 weeks for a new one, my next song, Season Startup, didn't come out until like mid-November. So, anyway, besides YouTube videos, I'm also a mechanical engineer by craft. I went to school for engineering and have done a lot of different things in different fields, but probably my most significant work was doing mechanical engineering for aircraft carriers for the United States Navy, specifically the nuclear-powered Nimitz class. So that's why I was living in Virginia. And obviously, a lot of that ended up being inspiration for Confessions Episode 4, The Engineer, because it more or less is my own life experience directly put to paper. But ultimately, I wanted to move back to California because I was born here and raised here, and I love the West. It's where I belong. And it's definitely one of the reasons why Fallout New Vegas is my favorite game of the series. NCR forever. Then aside from all that, I like going on road trips, vacations, hanging out with friends, my brother, going to shooting range. I'm an Xbox guy, so I'm really into Halo and Red vs. Blue and a lot of Rooster Teeth stuff by extension, so Rooster Teeth Podcast, Off Topic Podcast, Ruby, Day 5, Crunch Time. Definitely a lot of inspirations from that. And really just Rooster Teeth as a whole I use as inspiration for building online success and framework, and it was definitely something that got me into doing YouTube videos in the first place. So I think, in general, I'm a pretty normal, nerdy guy, except for all the nuclear horror stuff, of course. And then, final question. What kind of stories are coming next, and how will Amber's story end? Where's it all going? Like I said, episodes 5 and 6 are written and on the way, and they're both going to be basically as long as 4, and in the same way, they have a lot of smaller stories built within their bigger story, just like how each Confessions episode is built within the overarching story as a whole. Amber's story definitely has a conclusion, and that's why I put that little after-credit hint at the end of the episode. But that's a story that's still yet to be told. So, anyway, thank you to everyone who stuck around and enjoys these audio dramas, because between those and my episodes of Terminal Secrets, they're all developing my skills as a writer and creator, so I'm hoping things keep getting better and you keep enjoying the things that come out. This has been a real labor of love for me, and I'm glad that other artists and so many fantastic VAs have come through to help me tell these stories and them to show off their own incredible talents. All of us at Stable-Tec are happy to have you here, and we hope to keep creating wonderful Fallout Equestria stories from here on out. So stay tuned, because the end of Confessions is definitely on its way. It'll be a journey, and hopefully you enjoy your stay while we're here. Thanks again to all the fans who have made all this possible. We'll see you soon.